Hello. This week's Torah Sedra is Sedra Nitzavim and Vayelach. This week's Torah portion in Nitzavim ends with an important message for the ages. The challenging part of the message is that at a superficial glance, it seems repetitious. The Sedra ends with 5 verses that seem to broadcast the message of following the Torah twice. In this Dvar Torah, I want to demonstrate how the verses contain 2 different messages. The first set of verses states, "I set before you this day prosperity, death, and adversity. For I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments, his laws, and his rules, that you may thrive and increase, and that the Lord your God may bless you in the land that you are about to enter and possess. But if your heart turns away, and you give no heed, and are lured into the worship and service of other gods, I declare to you this day that you shall certainly perish. You shall not long endure on the soil that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess." In his commentary on these verses, Rashi wrote, "Each one, life or death, is dependent on the other. If you do good, you will be granted life, while if you do evil, you will receive death." The verse now proceeds to explain how this is so. Rashi clearly understood the first paragraph of these closing verses as the principle, and the next verses as the instructions on how to follow the principle. Let's look at the last verses. The closing verses seem to repeat the exact same call to follow the Torah. "I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, if you and your offspring would live, by loving the Lord your God, heeding his commands and holding fast to him. For thereby you shall have life and shall long endure upon the soil that the Lord swore to your ancestors, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, to give to them." In his commentary on this verse, Rav Sedra Gaon wrote that this was advice. "I advise you to choose life," he wrote. And Rashi wrote that God says, "Even though you have free choice, nevertheless I instruct you to choose the portion of life." Rashi offered an analogy. It's as if like a man who says to his son, "Choose yourself a fine portion of my estate," and then directs him to the best portion, saying to him, "This is the portion which you should choose for yourself." While it seems like the first group of verses call to choose the proper path is the same as the last group's call to choose life, that's not how to best understand these verses. There's really no repetition. The first message is to make the right choice, while the second group of verses explains how the proper choice manifests itself in our lives by loving God. Now, what does the true love of God look like? The Rambam addressed our question, and he wrote, "What is the proper degree of love of God? A person should love God with a very great and exceeding love until his soul is bound up in the love of God. He will always be obsessed with this love as if he is lovesick. A lovesick person's thoughts are never diverted from the love of that woman. He is always obsessed with her. When he sits down, when he gets up, when he eats and drinks, with even greater love, the love of God should be implanted in the hearts of those who love him and are obsessed with him at all times. As we are commanded, love God with all your heart and all your soul." That's the love of God that the second verses instruct us on how to do, always thinking about God. What a strong and powerful message at the end of this week's Sedra. Shabbat Shalom.